Hi guys. In keeping up with the rural theme and wilderness theme of my latest builds, I've decided to make some more trees and hedges. I've made some before, but not very many, and I thought it would be nice to add some few trees and hedges to my collections. And it is pretty easy to make them, so I thought you might be interested in how I make my trees. I'm Jarlsdorf and I hope you like the video. So let's start with the trees. As usual, I'll be cutting the bases out of HDF. At first I tried to do it with a scissor, but I quickly see my mistake and ask the lovely trusty knife for forgiveness. To give the base a more natural look, I round and bevel the edges and don't even think about the scissors, not ever again. For the tree trunks I'm using some bamboo skewers, just use 3 or 4 of them, tape or glue them together. We will be covering them up anyway, so it's just to hold them together. And it seems that in my expert camera skills I didn't capture it on the video, but you want to of course glue your trunk to the bases with some hot glue. As you've probably already seen in the title, we will be making 2 types of trees, cypress trees and pine trees. Let's start with a cypress tree, as they need a lot less work to craft. Basically, for a cypress tree you want to build up this elongated shape on your trunk in some way. One way would be paper mache that you made out of confidential government documents like I did. Another way, a lot less environmentally friendly way but much easier, is just rolling some toilet paper into thick strands, covering them in PVA glue and sculpting your tree with it. A few general hints for making a good cypress tree: they kinda look like a drawn out pear or an egg, so we want to have a sharp taper on the top but a still round bottom. And keep in mind that these types of tree generally have shorter trunks than regular leafy trees, so make it about 3 or 4 centimeters tall. For the basis of the pine tree I'm using the scrubby part of dish sponges. They're always left over after I make my flocking, so yay! Save the planet, nothing goes to waste. You want to cut them into rings that get smaller with each level to make kind of a round pyramid. And it's handy to use the lower, bigger ring as a guide for the next smaller one. Just remember that it doesn't need to fit perfect at this point. You can always touch up things later, you can always cut it, you can always glue it, just do it, don't worry. To put the rings on my trunk, I punctured them with an awl. I have an awl because on multiple occasions I was trying to get into leatherworking, but you can just use a scissor or a trusty knife of your choosing. For now they should hold just fine with friction, but I'm going to glue them down to keep them steady for the next steps. Now this is a good time to start sculpting the bark. I would love to give you some good tips on sculpting it, but I myself didn't really figure it out yet. I'm using commercial paper mache. It's rather cheap and I've been loving it lately. It's such a versatile material and I can't really seem to replicate it no matter how hard I try. And I just make some random cuts in every possible direction to make it look barkylicious. I don't know, I don't do trees very often, sorry. Next we want to cover our bases with sand and prime our trees in black. And as the trees are drying, let's take a moment to prep our hedges. And I'll be making them now because the later steps are the same for the trees and the hedges. And to make them you just really need a few layers of cardboard glued together in a length and thickness that fits your tastes. Remember to keep it thick enough to be stable. To aid the stability you can glue something as a base. I'm using pennies here. And it isn't really important that your cardboard is exactly a particular shape or length or thickness or whatever, because ideally we are going to cover it completely in flocking and none of the cardboard will show through. And as I just said, we will be using my sponge/foam flocking for the leaves, for the foliage. But first we need a proper base color. In some of my previous attempts I just use the black on the trees and hedges, but when it shows through, it's really obvious. And if you paint them like dark brown to imitate dead branches or the trunk showing through, it also doesn't really work well. So I found that using a uniform coat of dark green works best. Now, the most important step for the hedges, you just want to cover each side completely in PVA glue and flocking of your choosing. And it's best to make it one side at a time to give it some time to cure. For the pine tree, I'm first shoving some bigger foam between each level and then covering the entire tree in flocking liberally. For the cypress tree as well, I'm just covering it with PVA and applying flocking. It's all a rather messy job, and to be honest, the whole process would probably be easier with some sort of tacky glue, but I don't have it at hand currently. The problem with PVA is that you need a lot of it for the flocking to stick, and it needs a long time to dry. Anyway, after it's all dry, give your foliage a second look. Find all the spots where your under layer shows through and cover it with more flocking. Now at this point we are ready with the hedges. They don't need any more work, but the trees still need some painting. Nothing fancy. The ground I first overbrush with gray and the bark with brown, and then I give them a little bit of a dry brush with white and beige. As the last final accent, I spray the whole thing with diluted PVA mixture to bind the flocking better together, and then I sprinkle some lighter, finer flocking onto it to give it some highlights. So this is how they turn out. I really like them. They're pretty simple, you know, especially the hedges. The hedges turn out really great, and I made them before. I also made the cypress trees before. The pine tree was a little bit of an experiment, and you know, it's not the most realistic. It's rather simplistic, a little bit cartoony, but it looks good on the table, and this is what counts the most, I think. All the models that I make are a little bit cartoony in the style, you know, high contrast, deep, dark washes, and these fit nice with my overall style. And this is the most important thing, I think. It's not good when like half of your buildings and terrain is super realistic and really detailed, and the other half is in a completely different style. And I have chosen this a little bit more cartoony, a little bit more exaggerated style, you know, in line with the Warhammer miniatures, and it all fits nice together. Bombe! So yeah, that's my life. So, I hope you liked the video. If you want more, there's a new one every Tuesday. Yeah, like and subscribe to be updated when it comes out. Goodbye, see you soon.